what's good, family? It's your boy Rob. Welcome to the Golden Pulse channel. Today's topic is about the Super Bowl protester, Zul Qarnain Nantambu, that made a bold statement during Kendrick Lamar's halftime show at the 2025 Super Bowl, holding up both flags in protest, standing against Zionist oppression and representing the struggles of Palestinians and the people of Sudan. His words, check it out.
Halftime are all over social media. Tell us a bit more about why you decided to do this.
Alhamdulillah. Well, I felt I didn't have a choice because I was selected to be a part of the halftime show, and when I saw what my position was, it was a great stage, a large stage, and we know as a practicing Muslim, our Prophet Muhammad teaches us if you see a wrongdoing or you're aware of a wrongdoing, you must stop it with your hands. And if you can't stop it with your hands, stop it with your tongue. Speak out against it. And if you can't stop it with your tongue, try to stop it with your heart, meaning pray about it. And we know that's the weakest of faith. So I had an opportunity on a grand scale to bring awareness or speak out against a wrong of our Muslim brothers and sisters, because we know if one part of the body is hurting, all of the body is hurting. This ummah is one body. So I didn't want to face my creator and not with a sign of weak faith when I knew I had an opportunity to show I didn't have weak faith.
So let me ask you, do you have any cultural or family links to either Palestine or Sudan, or was this purely a gesture of humanity and support for those affected by these wars?
Yes, humanitarian. I'm a humanitarian and I'm a Muslim. So we're spiritually connected in Islam, and we're connected with empathy for humanity, because we're all human beings, God's creation, and they're oppressed. And we know God answers the prayers of the oppressed. They are suffering. They're treated with injustice, and it's on a wide scale, and nobody is really giving it the light that it should get, at least working toward a change. And I wanted to show the solidarity to those afflicted by this and their families and loved ones, that they're being remembered here in America. And they're being remembered here in America, not just by me, but by others. And it'll strengthen all of our faith. It was not about a countryman. It was more about spiritual.
Okay, let me jump in and ask you, do you think the protest or your protest is likely to damage your career? Are you worried you may find it difficult to get work again, given what happened?
I trust in God, brother. I wanted to pass that. I fear God more than I fear man. I fear loss of wealth. I fear loss of anything else. I fear losing the pleasure of Allah. And it was clear to me with the signs of the show that Kendrick had the American flag and human bodies. He had his PG Lane flags, and it was also many signs for me to show those flags to show how we're all connected.
Yes, because I think you mentioned in a previous interview that Kendrick Lamar was a source of influence for your protest at halftime. So what was it about Lamar that you drew inspiration from?
It wasn't a source of inspiration. I believe I was inspired by a creator, but he was confirmation. Seeing his show, when him talking about the revolution being televised, him having scenes where the American flag is made out of in a human formation, him having his own company's flags flying around. I saw those all as signs for me to incorporate the flag. Him having Samuel L. Jackson playing Uncle Sam. The whole theme being conscious, revolutionary, to make one's consciousness rise and show unification of people. And I thought that I could contribute to taking it to the next level with this activism and protest and enlightenment, to make other people aware of what's going on in other parts of the world. A lot of people didn't know what was going on in Gaza. A lot of people didn't know what was going on in Sudan, and they feel like they're not being represented properly. So I had the opportunity to represent them on a global scale, and I had to take that opportunity. Yeah, and just even to get the prayers of the people.
Okay,
it was worth it just to get the prayers of the Palestinian and the Sudanese.
Yeah, in response to your protest, the NFL says you'll now be banned for life from all NFL stadiums, from all events. What's your response to the ban, and would you still have done it if you'd known the risks?
The risk of a ban? I was afraid I was going to get sniped by a Secret Service's bullet. I can watch a football program on the television if I choose to, sir. And I don't like large crowds anyway.
Okay, all right. Zul Qarnain Nantambu, really good to get your thoughts and to tell us about what happened to you there at the halftime. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you.
Wait, Can I tell your people to follow us on FFF_Zul Qarnain, please?
Fantastic.
Open book platform.
Fantastic. We'll do that. Thank you, Zul Qarnain.
Out. Real talk. Respect to this, bro. I feel the same way. Who really cares about the Super Bowl anyway? Why drop a bag on some nosebleed seats where you can barely see the game? I get the experience, but at home, I got instant replays, zoom-ins, and the best angles. Let's be real, it's all scripted anyway. Now everybody knows what's happening in Palestine, but have y'all been paying attention to Sudan?
Let's talk about what's happening in Sudan, because people are talking about the risk of genocide. Here in Darfur, in the city of El Fasher.
It's a very dire situation. There is fighting in all directions. Most of the attacks are happening on civilians' facilities, particularly civilians' homes.
We're past warning. For the people on the ground in El Fasher, they don't need press releases. They need protection.
A civil war broke out in Sudan just over a year ago, and there's fighting across large parts of the country. The capital, Khartoum, is barely functioning.
What we're looking at only a year on is near total state collapse.
Sudan is the world's largest humanitarian crisis.
The world has abandoned Sudan.
So what's actually happening in Darfur? And what's being done to stop the fighting? First, a quick reminder of the backstory. Sudan was ruled by one man, Omar al-Bashir, for 30 years. He was brought down in 2019, in part because of pressure from huge protests. Then there was a short period when Sudan looked like it was on a path to democracy. And among a lot of people, there was a sense of hope. But that democratic transition got derailed pretty quickly. In 2021, there was a military coup, and then, last year, war broke out. It started out as a personal rivalry between these two generals, General Burhan, who leads Sudan's national army, that's the Sudanese Armed Forces, or SAF, and General Hemeti, who leads a paramilitary group called the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF. And basically, you've ended up with SAF and the RSF in a bitter fight to control Sudan. There are many other armed groups in the mix, but SAF basically controls parts of the east and north, and the RSF has most of the west, and most of the capital, Khartoum.
Khartoum is obviously a symbolic territory, and so we will continue to see both SAF and the RSF fight over that territory, even as they win and lose other territories around the country.
Sudan, as we know it, has died. And it is now a series of regional conflicts with regional forces defending regional interests.
And that brings us to what's happening in Darfur, which is a huge region, roughly the size of Spain. It's divided into 5 states, and the RSF already has control of 4 of them. Now the battle is on for the last one, North Darfur, and its capital, El Fasher, where SAF have a military base and are trying to hold on to the city. For most of last year, there were various truces in El Fasher, where local armed groups agreed not to take sides and acted like a buffer between RSF and SAF. But the latest truce appeared to collapse in April, and several groups aligned themselves with SAF to fight against the RSF.
And that puts El Fasher very much back in the crosshairs of RSF. What RSF is doing in El Fasher right now is that they are essentially trying to strangulate the city. They've even tried cutting off water to the city. That's how brutal this is getting.
There's a strategic sort of logic of at the RSF leadership level, which is to take El Fasher and therefore have control over all 5 states of Darfur and all 3 border points with Libya, with Chad, with the Central African Republic.
If you don't control El Fasher, you don't control Darfur. And RSF knows that.
But if the RSF take control of El Fasher, there are huge fears about what it means for the estimated 1.8 million people living there, especially because there's an ethnic dimension to this war, where you have, very broadly, Arab militias aligned with the RSF targeting what are commonly referred to as non-Arab groups. And to understand that, we have to go back to the 2000s. In 2003, there was an uprising in Darfur against the government of Omar al-Bashir. The rebel groups were mostly from non-Arab communities like the Zagawa, Masalit, and Fur, who felt neglected by the Arab-dominated government. Bashir responded by arming local Arab militias known as the Janjaweed to fight against the rebels.
They killed, raped, burned, massively displaced up to a third of the population of Darfur as a whole.
Violence is worsening.
The bombing, murder, and rape of innocent civilians.
Genocide there has already claimed 400,000 lives.
Remains of Darfur's dead, brought to the surface by strong desert winds.
Later, the Janjaweed evolved and rebranded as the Rapid Support Forces. And in 2017, Bashir's government made the RSF an official paramilitary unit, a kind of second army. But the RSF kept their strong links with Darfur and the Arab militias there.
The RSF is a monster that the Sudanese army and the Sudanese regime created, and now it's turned on the Sudanese state.
They have become regularized, they have uniforms, but effectively these are the same types of people, same groups of people with the same political objectives.
The RSF has been so emboldened and so empowered to commit such atrocities for over 20 years. It happened before and they got away with it.
So what's happening in Darfur now is basically an old conflict that's being reignited. There's mounting evidence that the RSF and its allies are using similar tactics as before. These pictures show RSF forces rounding up people from the Masalit ethnic group in a place called Ardamata in West Darfur late last year. It's a suburb of the city of Al Janaina. And a recent UN report described how the RSF have been targeting the Masalit community, and that between 10 and 15,000 people were killed in Al Janaina. An independent investigation says it's found clear evidence that massacres against the Masalit amount to genocide. In the last couple of months, the fighting has moved to El Fasher. A team of researchers at Yale University have been monitoring the area using satellite imagery.
We believe that they burned, just in the past 2 months, well over 40 villages in and around El Fasher, primarily Zagawa communities. And so the tempo of destruction, of intentional targeting of communities by RSF in Darfur has sped up.
And that's why people are increasingly worried about what could happen if the RSF take over the whole of El Fasher. It's a city where hundreds of thousands of people fled to escape recent RSF attacks in other parts of Darfur and the conflict back in the 2000s.
El Fasher has become a sanctuary city, and this is what really has inflated its population in recent months.
If El Fasher falls, then there will be nothing that prevents Rapid Support Forces from then identifying every single community left standing that they missed.
And it's not just fear of more killings. People in El Fasher are already starving. Right now, Sudan is facing one of the world's biggest hunger crises. Almost half the population don't have enough to eat. Around 5 million people are teetering on the brink of starvation. In one refugee camp south of El Fasher, a child is dying every 2 hours because of malnutrition, according to Doctors Without Borders.
والله هي صعب بصراحه يعني انا ناسه لها دوله حتى الان دوله دي انت شايفه لحتى الان ما قدرت عشان يجيبوا لنا حاجه نسوي عيال ده نعشين بوزات.
My team are telling me in Darfur what they see is that people are eating leaves, they're eating soil, they're eating 1 meal a day if they're lucky.
And aid is just not getting to people who need it, especially in Darfur. International aid agencies are struggling to get to these conflict areas, and both the RSF and SAF have been accused of blocking or stealing aid as a war tactic.
The reason why people are surviving is because we have local volunteers, Sudanese, who are on the ground, on the front line, risking their lives to save their peers.
There's also a funding problem. The UN says it needs $2.7 billion for its aid operations in Sudan this year, and that it's only received 17% of that. Now, something else to keep in mind is that this war is also being fueled because the RSF and SAF are getting support from other countries. The UAE is accused of supplying weapons to the RSF, allegations that a panel of UN experts described as credible based on their own investigations. The UAE denies supplying weapons, calling the accusations propaganda, and says it's transporting aid to Sudan. And then you've got Russia, which appears to be backing both sides. A mercenary group linked to the Russian government is said to be supplying the RSF with weapons, while Russia is also supporting SAF as a way, it seems, to secure access to Sudan's Red Sea coast, where SAF is in control. SAF also has Egypt on its side. General Burhan has made visits to Cairo. There are also reports that SAF has been using Iranian drones.
If supplies to these two sides slow down, I think we would see this war start to die down quite a bit as well. So outside powers and backers of these two sides are clearly helping prolong the war.
At the same time, there have been some diplomatic efforts to try to stop the fighting. For example, Egypt and the UAE reportedly brought the two sides together for talks in Bahrain earlier this year. And the UN Security Council has adopted a resolution calling for the RSF to stop its attack on al-Fashir, for both sides to agree to a ceasefire and to allow aid in.
We've actually seen more of a aligning of interests among the outside actors to actually want to get some end to this war. Basically, no one really seems to benefit from Sudan collapsing, but the problem is that the two warring sides want to keep fighting.
And remember, it's not really just two sides because of all the other groups involved, especially in Darfur. And that makes finding any kind of resolution even harder. Whether there's enough global political will to even push for that is a whole other question.
The spillover from the Sudan war is tremendous. It affects the whole region. It could easily affect the whole continent of Africa, and nothing is being done.
We are consistently raising the issue of Sudan to top diplomats around the world, and many times they make clear to us it's just not high on their agenda. Now that we might see 1 million Sudanese starve to death, I expect we'll see some uptick in efforts to try to save the Sudanese people. I hope it's not all too little too late, but obviously most of it is too little too late, and everyone was warned.
And, bro, that's wild. Every time someone gets power, it either corrupts them or exposes who they really were. Scumbags profiting off the struggles of the working class. Power built on the backs of everyday people. It is what it is. Alright, y'all, that's it for today's video. Let me know what you think about these topics in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And above all else, stay safe out here. Catch y'all in the next one. Peace.